On a seemingly ordinary March morning in 2012, 15-year-old Sierra LaMar prepared for school as usual, completely unaware of the life-changing tragedy that was about to unfold. After giving her mother, Marlene, a warm goodbye, Sierra began her short walk to the bus stop in the quiet town of Morgan Hill, California. However, in just a few minutes, something went terribly wrong. Sierra LaMar was born on October 19, 1996, in Fremont, California, and was the younger of Marlene's two daughters. Her older sister, Danielle, was 6 years her senior, and the two shared a close bond despite their age difference. Sierra grew up in a loving and supportive family, where she was known for her vibrant personality and infectious energy. Teachers often described her as a natural comedian, someone who could lighten the mood in any room and effortlessly bring a smile to those around her. She had a reputation for being playful and outgoing, but never disruptive or troublesome, striking a perfect balance between humor and respectfulness. From a young age, Sierra had a love for performing and physical activities. She spent her early years dancing, a hobby that showcased her confidence and rhythm. Later, she joined her school's cheerleading team, a decision that allowed her to channel her energy and enthusiasm into something she genuinely enjoyed. Her presence on the team made her a standout, not just for her skill, but also for her ability to motivate and uplift her teammates. Sierra had a strong connection with her family. She often accompanied her father to animated movies, a shared passion that created cherished memories for both of them. Despite their parents' divorce when Sierra was just a child, her relationships with both her mother and father remained close. She and her mother, Marlene, shared a particularly tight bond, frequently engaging in open and candid conversations about life, school, and the challenges of growing up. When Sierra was a teenager, her life took a significant turn. Her mother began dating a new partner, and this eventually led to a major move. In 2011, Sierra relocated with her mother and her mother's partner to Morgan Hill, a small, quieter town in the San Francisco Bay Area. This move meant leaving behind everything Sierra had ever known, including her childhood home, her close friends, and the familiar surroundings of Fremont. Although she initially felt hesitant and even resistant to the change, Sierra's resilient nature soon emerged. Adjusting to life in Morgan Hill was not without its difficulties. Sierra missed her friends deeply and struggled with the idea of her mother living with someone she wasn't married to, a situation she found uncomfortable. However, her natural charisma and positive attitude helped her adapt. She made new friends at her high school, quickly becoming part of the social fabric, and even joined the cheerleading team, continuing a passion she had carried from her previous school. Despite the distance, she maintained her connections with her old friends through phone calls and social media, ensuring she never completely lost touch with the life she had left behind. Sierra also stayed connected with her sister Danielle, who was attending college in Sacramento. The two often spoke on the phone, discussing everything from personal experiences to everyday teenage concerns. Sierra's ability to balance her new life in Morgan Hill with her past in Fremont highlighted her strength and adaptability. As Sierra settled into her new environment, her close-knit relationships with her family and friends continued to define her life. She was a girl full of dreams, energy, and promise, ready to take on whatever challenges came her way. Adjusting to life in Morgan Hill marked a significant transition for Sierra LaMar, one that came with its share of challenges and triumphs. The move, which occurred in 2011, meant leaving behind the vibrant community of Fremont, where Sierra had spent her formative years. She had built deep-rooted friendships and a sense of familiarity with her surroundings, making the relocation an emotional upheaval. At just 15 years old, Sierra found herself navigating the complexities of adapting to a new home, a new school, and a different social environment, all while grappling with the reality of her mother Marlene's new relationship. Morgan Hill, a quieter town located in the San Francisco Bay Area, was a stark contrast to the bustling and lively atmosphere Sierra had grown up in. Initially, the move felt like an unwelcome disruption to the life she loved. Sierra missed her friends deeply and expressed frustration over the decision to relocate. She also struggled with her feelings about her mother's partner, finding it challenging to accept their cohabitation outside of marriage. These factors contributed to her initial reluctance to embrace her new surroundings fully. However, Sierra's naturally resilient and outgoing personality soon began to shine through. Determined not to let her circumstances dampen her spirit, she approached her new life with a sense of optimism. At her new high school, Sierra quickly became known for her charisma and friendly demeanor. She joined the cheerleading team, a move that not only allowed her to continue a passion she had nurtured for years, but also helped her forge new friendships. Her involvement in cheerleading made her a familiar and admired figure among her peers, and she was able to build a support network that eased her transition into this new phase of life. Despite her growing social circle in Morgan Hill, Sierra remained deeply connected to her past. She frequently stayed in touch with her old friends from Fremont, making regular visits whenever possible since the two cities were only an hour's drive apart. These visits became a source of comfort for Sierra, allowing her to maintain a sense of continuity amid the changes. She balanced her old and new friendships seamlessly, showcasing her ability to adapt without losing touch with her roots. Sierra's close relationship with her family also played a crucial role in helping her adjust. She often had candid conversations with her mother, openly discussing her thoughts and feelings about their new life in Morgan Hill. Although she wasn't entirely happy with the move, she maintained a good rapport with Marlene, showing a maturity that belied her age. Her bond with her older sister Danielle remained as strong as ever. The two siblings spoke frequently, sharing updates about their lives and providing each other with emotional support. As Sierra began to settle into her new environment, her optimism and positivity became apparent to those around her. She demonstrated remarkable adaptability, managing to thrive in her new high school while keeping her ties to Fremont alive. Though the move had initially felt like a setback, Sierra's natural ability to connect with people and her determination to make the best of her situation turned the experience into an opportunity for growth. By early 2012, she seemed to have struck a balance between her past and present, embodying the confidence and resilience that had always defined her character. March 16, 2012 began like any other day for 15-year-old Sierra LaMar, but it would tragically mark the last time she was seen alive. The morning started off routinely in Morgan Hill, California, where Sierra had been living with her mother Marlene and her mother's partner. As was her habit, Sierra woke up early to prepare for school. She chose an outfit, did her hair, and put on her makeup, capturing her reflection in a selfie that she later uploaded to her online diary, a personal space where she frequently posted pictures and shared glimpses of her daily life. After finishing her morning routine, Sierra headed to the kitchen, where she had a brief yet warm interaction with her mother. As usual, they exchanged hugs and said their goodbyes, with Sierra telling Marlene that she loved her before heading out the door. The short walk from their home to the nearby bus stop was familiar to Sierra, a path she had taken countless times since moving to Morgan Hill. On this quiet Friday morning, the streets were calm and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Marlene, assuming Sierra had boarded the school bus and was already immersed in her classes, went about her day as usual. Around midday, she sent her daughter a few text messages, reminding her of the chores she needed to complete after school. It wasn't unusual for Sierra to delay replying, as she was often busy during the school day. When Sierra didn't respond immediately, Marlene thought little of it, chalking it up to her daughter being preoccupied with her friends or schoolwork. The first sign that something was amiss came at 3:45 p.m. when Marlene finished work and decided to call Sierra to check in. The call went unanswered, which was unusual but not immediately alarming. Marlene figured Sierra might have been distracted or temporarily out of reach. However, as the hours passed without any word from her daughter, concern began to creep in. By 6 p.m., Marlene received an email from the school's automated attendance reporting system, notifying her that Sierra had not shown up for any of her classes that day. This revelation sent Marlene into a panic. She began calling Sierra's friends and anyone who might have seen her that day, but no one could account for her whereabouts. Realizing that something was seriously wrong, Marlene called 911 to report her daughter missing. The initial investigation began with officers checking the school bus surveillance footage, which confirmed that Sierra had never boarded the bus that morning. This discovery narrowed the timeline of her disappearance to the short distance between her house and the bus stop. As the evening turned into night, the police searched the area around the bus stop but found no immediate evidence of Sierra's presence. Her disappearance was initially treated as a standard missing person case, as there was no indication of foul play. However, the lack of any communication from Sierra, in the absence of clues in the early hours of the investigation, suggested that something far more troubling might have occurred. The quiet morning walk to the bus stop, once a simple daily routine, had suddenly become a point of profound mystery. Within just a few minutes, Sierra had vanished without a trace, leaving her family and the community of Morgan Hill deeply shaken. The investigation into Sierra LaMar's disappearance began as soon as her mother, Marlene, contacted the police on the evening of March 16, 2012. Officers initially treated the case as a typical missing person report. With no immediate evidence of foul play, they focused on retracing Sierra's steps that morning. The first crucial lead came from surveillance footage of the school bus she was supposed to take. After reviewing the recordings, authorities confirmed that Sierra never boarded the bus, narrowing the focus of their investigation to the short route between her home and the bus stop. Over the next few days, as family and friends distributed missing person flyers and pleaded for information, authorities began expanding their search efforts. On March 17th, just a day after Sierra was reported missing, her cell phone was discovered near an intersection approximately 2 miles from her home in Morgan Hill. The phone appeared to have been tossed from a moving vehicle, suggesting that it might have been discarded deliberately. Investigators hoped that forensic analysis of the device would provide clues, but a preliminary examination yielded no significant leads. The following day, March 18th, another discovery intensified concerns. A pink Juicy Couture bag belonging to Sierra was found abandoned at a separate intersection, not far from where her phone was recovered. Inside the bag were several of Sierra's personal items, including neatly folded clothes, her school documents, and the $5 bill she had been given for lunch that morning. Nothing appeared disturbed, and the scene lacked any overt signs of a struggle. The meticulous folding of the clothing raised questions about whether the bag had been staged. By now, the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office was beginning to suspect that Sierra's disappearance was not voluntary. The careful placement of her belongings and the disposal of her phone pointed toward the possibility of abduction. Despite the growing alarm, there was still no sign of Sierra herself, and no clear evidence linking anyone to her disappearance. As days turned into weeks, the search for Sierra became a massive community effort. Volunteers from Morgan Hill and surrounding areas rallied together, combing through rugged terrains that included fields, reservoirs, forests, and ravines. The area around Sierra's bus stop and her home was thoroughly searched, with over 150 items collected as potential evidence. One item in particular, a box labeled handcuffs along with used condoms, was found about a mile from Sierra's bus stop by a volunteer. However, investigators were unable to determine if the discovery was connected to Sierra's disappearance, as the area was a known gathering spot for teenagers. By March 20th, Sierra's case was officially classified as an abduction, elevating the urgency of the investigation. Authorities conducted interviews with local residents, reviewed surveillance footage from nearby locations, and worked to account for the whereabouts of registered sex offenders in the area. Among the individuals reviewed was Sierra's own father, Steve LaMar, whose criminal history became a point of scrutiny. Steve had been convicted in 2009 of child molestation charges involving 3 young girls, an incident that had resulted in him being legally prohibited from living alone with a minor. However, after thorough investigation, Steve was quickly ruled out as a suspect in Sierra's case. The community's support during these early weeks was overwhelming. Hundreds of volunteers participated in daily search efforts, determined to find any clue that could lead to Sierra's whereabouts. Despite the grim discoveries of her personal items and the ominous classification of her case as an abduction, hope remained strong among Sierra's family and friends. They refused to give up, believing that she could still be found alive. The early investigation, marked by mounting evidence and unanswered questions, set the stage for a deeper probe into the mysterious and heartbreaking disappearance of Sierra LaMar. As weeks turned into months, the search for Sierra LaMar intensified, becoming one of the largest and most coordinated efforts in Santa Clara County's history. Law enforcement expanded their resources, while volunteers continued to scour the region, determined to uncover any clue that might lead to Sierra's whereabouts. The Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office ramped up their operations, enlisting specialized search and rescue teams, cadaver dogs, and divers to investigate challenging terrains, including reservoirs, dense forests, and remote fields. Despite their exhaustive efforts, no trace of Sierra herself was found, adding to the growing anguish among her family and the community. Meanwhile, authorities began using advanced technological tools to aid their investigation. Forensic analysis of Sierra's cell phone, recovered early in the case, yielded limited results. However, law enforcement remained focused on tracing the device's last signals, which indicated that it had been in the vicinity of her home and bus stop before being discarded. Surveillance footage from nearby traffic cameras and businesses was also meticulously reviewed, but no suspicious activity was immediately evident. Investigators worked tirelessly to piece together a timeline, but the lack of clear leads made progress slow and frustrating. As the investigation continued, the role of the community became increasingly vital. Volunteers organized daily searches, often covering the same areas multiple times in hopes of uncovering missed evidence. Sierra's mother, Marlene LaMar, and other family members became the faces of the search effort, holding press conferences, distributing flyers, and keeping Sierra's name in the public eye. The Class Kids Foundation, established by Mark Class after his daughter Polly's abduction and murder, provided logistical support, helping coordinate searches and offering emotional guidance to Sierra's family. This collaboration ensured that the search remained organized and persistent, even as weeks without answers turned into months. On May 8, 2012, nearly 2 months after Sierra's disappearance, a significant breakthrough occurred. A 21-year-old man named Antolin Garcia Torres was identified as a person of interest in the case. DNA evidence found on Sierra's belongings, including her clothing, matched Garcia Torres. Additionally, surveillance footage placed his vehicle in the area where Sierra's phone and bag had been discovered. Garcia Torres, a Morgan Hill resident with a history of arrests for minor offenses, became the primary focus of the investigation. Authorities also linked him to 3 unsolved assaults involving women in grocery store parking lots in 2009, raising concerns about a potential pattern of predatory behavior. With this development, law enforcement shifted their efforts to building a case against Garcia Torres. They monitored his movements, gathered additional evidence, and conducted interviews with individuals who knew him. Despite the mounting suspicion, authorities were cautious about making an arrest without sufficient evidence to ensure a strong prosecution. During this time, Garcia Torres denied any involvement in Sierra's disappearance, maintaining his innocence even as public scrutiny intensified. In parallel, search efforts continued unabated. Volunteers expanded their focus to new locations, often traveling miles away from Morgan Hill in case Sierra had been taken to a more remote area. The use of drones and sonar technology became increasingly common, reflecting the desperation to leave no stone unturned. Despite their unwavering determination, searchers faced the painful reality that time was working against them. As days passed without new leads, hope that Sierra would be found alive began to wane for some, though her family remained steadfast in their belief that she was out there. The discovery of DNA evidence in Sierra LaMar's case became a crucial turning point in the investigation, offering a glimpse of hope amidst months of uncertainty. On May 8, 2012, authorities announced they had identified a suspect, 21-year-old Antolin Garcia Torres, a Morgan Hill resident with a criminal record that included minor offenses. His DNA had been matched to evidence found on Sierra's discarded belongings, including her clothing. This revelation marked the most significant lead in the case so far, as it linked Garcia Torres directly to the items left near her bus stop. Investigators also discovered his vehicle had been captured on surveillance cameras near the locations where Sierra's phone and bag had been recovered. These findings prompted authorities to shift their focus toward building a case against him. Garcia Torres quickly became the central figure in the investigation. A resident of the area, he lived with his mother and had a young child. Despite his relatively low profile, further scrutiny of his background revealed troubling connections to other crimes. In 2009, he had been linked to a series of unsolved assaults on women in grocery store parking lots in the Morgan Hill area. These incidents involved attempts to force women into his car, and the similarity in modus operandi raised concerns that Sierra's disappearance might not have been an isolated act. However, Garcia Torres had not been convicted for these prior assaults, leaving a gap in his criminal record that added to the complexity of the case. Law enforcement officers began monitoring Garcia Torres closely, tracking his movements and conducting interviews with those who knew him. They searched his home and vehicle for additional evidence, hoping to find any clue that could confirm his involvement in Sierra's disappearance. Although the DNA evidence was a significant breakthrough, investigators knew it alone might not be enough to secure a conviction without Sierra's body or direct eyewitness testimony. This led to heightened efforts to uncover further physical evidence and build a timeline of Garcia Torres's activities on the day Sierra vanished. Despite the mounting pressure, Garcia Torres denied any involvement in the case. He maintained his innocence during interviews, and his family publicly defended him, arguing that he was being unfairly targeted. The community, however, remained divided. While some believed in his guilt due to the DNA evidence and his connections to previous crimes, others questioned whether the investigation had prematurely focused on him without irrefutable proof. The media coverage of the case intensified, with reporters delving into Garcia Torres's past and scrutinizing every development in the investigation. Meanwhile, Sierra's family grappled with the emotional toll of the unfolding revelations. While the identification of a suspect provided a sense of progress, it also deepened their anguish. They continued to advocate for more searches, holding on to the hope that Sierra might still be alive. Marlene and Steve LaMar remained vocal, urging the public to come forward with any information that could help locate their daughter. The Class Kids Foundation and community volunteers redoubled their efforts, extending the search to areas previously overlooked and employing new technologies, such as drones and sonar, in the hope of finding evidence that could bring clarity to the case. The involvement of Antolin Garcia Torres marked a pivotal moment in the search for Sierra LaMar. The DNA evidence tied him to her belongings, and his history of violent behavior towards women raised alarming questions about his potential role in her disappearance. Yet without a body or direct proof of abduction, the case remained fraught with uncertainties. The focus now shifted to balancing the pursuit of justice with the ongoing search for Sierra, as her family, law enforcement, and the community refused to give up hope of uncovering the truth. This phase of the investigation underscored the complexities of pursuing a case built on circumstantial evidence, as well as the enduring determination of those committed to finding Sierra and holding her perpetrator accountable. On May 21, 2012, 2 months after Sierra LaMar disappeared, law enforcement officers arrested Antolin Garcia Torres on charges of kidnapping and murder. Despite the absence of Sierra's body, the evidence against Garcia Torres was substantial enough to warrant his arrest. The Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office cited DNA matches from Sierra's belongings and circumstantial evidence, including surveillance footage, as the basis for the charges. They believe the evidence demonstrated Garcia Torres's direct connection to Sierra's disappearance and indicated foul play. His arrest marked a significant milestone in the investigation, offering some measure of progress in a case that had captured widespread attention and left the community on edge. Garcia Torres was taken into custody near his home in Morgan Hill without incident. During his first court appearance, he pleaded not guilty to the charges, maintaining his innocence despite mounting evidence against him. His defense attorney argued that the DNA evidence could have been transferred through indirect contact and emphasized the lack of physical evidence proving Sierra had been harmed or abducted by Garcia Torres. These arguments set the stage for what would become a lengthy and highly publicized legal battle. The prosecution's case relied heavily on the DNA evidence found on Sierra's clothing and the inconsistencies in Garcia Torres's behavior. They argued that the DNA linked him definitively to the crime and pointed to his history of violence against women as evidence of a pattern of predatory behavior. In addition to the DNA, investigators presented surveillance footage of Garcia Torres's vehicle in areas associated with the case. They also highlighted his connection to earlier assaults on women in Morgan Hill, which bore similarities to Sierra's disappearance. Although he had not been convicted for these prior crimes, the prosecution argued that they established a pattern that could not be ignored. The defense sought to undermine the prosecution's case by casting doubt on the reliability of the DNA evidence and the absence of Sierra's body. They emphasized the possibility of alternative explanations for the DNA transfer and criticized investigators for focusing too narrowly on Garcia Torres, potentially overlooking other leads. Garcia Torres's family supported his claims of innocence, asserting that he was a loving father and son who had been unfairly targeted due to his past. The defense team argued that the prosecution's reliance on circumstantial evidence left room for reasonable doubt and called for a fair trial to ensure justice. As the case moved toward trial, the community remained divided. Many residents, moved by the LaMar family's grief and the tireless efforts to find Sierra, believed in Garcia Torres's guilt and called for swift justice. Others questioned whether the evidence was strong enough to convict him without a body or eyewitness testimony. Media coverage intensified, with national outlets following the case and experts debating the strength of the evidence and the challenges of prosecuting a no-body homicide. The trial itself did not begin until years later, as pre-trial hearings, motions, and delays extended the timeline. In the meantime, Sierra's family continued their advocacy, keeping her story in the public eye and pushing for ongoing searches to find her remains. Marlene and Steve LaMar attended court proceedings and made public statements expressing both their frustration at the slow pace of justice and their determination to hold Garcia Torres accountable. Their resilience inspired continued community support as volunteers and organizations like the Class Kids Foundation remained active in their efforts to locate Sierra. When the trial finally commenced in January 2017, it became one of the most closely watched cases in California. The prosecution presented its evidence methodically, focusing on the DNA findings, Garcia Torres's behavior, and his potential motive. The defense countered by highlighting gaps in the evidence and raising questions about the investigation's thoroughness. Both sides acknowledged the emotional weight of the case, with Sierra's family present in the courtroom throughout the proceedings. The trial marked a critical chapter in the search for justice, as it sought to resolve the questions surrounding Sierra's disappearance and determine Garcia Torres's culpability once and for all. The case of Sierra LaMar left a profound impact on her family, the local community, and the broader public, even as critical questions about her disappearance remain unanswered. In the aftermath of Antolin Garcia Torres's conviction in 2017, the LaMar family faced the difficult reality that, despite the guilty verdict, they still did not know Sierra's whereabouts. This lingering uncertainty has been a source of enduring pain for her parents, Marlene and Steve LaMar, who continue to advocate for the discovery of their daughter's remains. The absence of physical closure, even after years of searching and legal battles, underscores the unresolved nature of the tragedy. In the years since Sierra's disappearance, her case has served as a rallying point for awareness about missing children and the importance of community involvement in search efforts. The LaMar family has channeled their grief into action, working with organizations like the Class Kids Foundation to support other families facing similar losses. Through these partnerships, they have emphasized the value of coordinated searches, public vigilance, and advances in forensic technology. Sierra's name has become a symbol of hope and determination, inspiring efforts to protect vulnerable young people and prevent future tragedies. The case also raised significant questions about the legal challenges of prosecuting no-body homicides. Garcia Torres's conviction relied heavily on forensic evidence and circumstantial connections, sparking debates among legal experts about the standards of proof in such cases. While the jury found the evidence compelling enough to deliver a guilty verdict, the absence of Sierra's body remained a point of contention, with critics arguing that it left room for doubt. This case has since been studied as an example of how modern investigative techniques, including DNA analysis, can be used to secure convictions even in the most difficult circumstances. The community of Morgan Hill and surrounding areas has also been deeply affected by Sierra's story. Her disappearance highlighted the vulnerabilities of teenagers and the potential dangers they face, prompting increased awareness of safety measures and self-defense. Local schools and organizations have implemented programs focused on personal safety and awareness, often citing Sierra's case as a reminder of the stakes involved. Vigils, fundraisers, and community events held in Sierra's honor have further strengthened the bonds among residents, creating a legacy of solidarity and mutual support. Despite these positive developments, the case has left unanswered questions that continue to haunt those closest to Sierra. How and why Garcia Torres targeted her and what truly happened on the morning of March 16, 2012, remain mysteries. The lack of a definitive timeline or additional witnesses has made it difficult to piece together the final moments of Sierra's life. For her family, the search for answers is far from over. They have expressed hope that one day, someone with information will come forward, or that advances in technology will uncover new leads. Until then, they remain steadfast in their commitment to keeping Sierra's memory alive. Sierra's story has also had a lasting impact on the national conversation about missing persons cases, particularly those involving teenagers. Advocacy groups have pointed to her case as an example of the importance of immediate action, widespread public awareness, and the integration of community resources in search efforts. The case has highlighted both the strengths and limitations of the current system, prompting calls for improved protocols and resources for law enforcement and families alike. Ultimately, the legacy of Sierra LaMar is one of resilience, love, and an enduring quest for justice. While her family and the community continue to grapple with the loss, they have turned their pain into a force for good, ensuring that her story remains a beacon of hope for others facing similar struggles. The unanswered questions serve as a reminder of the complexities and challenges of missing persons cases, but they also underscore the importance of perseverance and the unbreakable bond of family and community in the face of unimaginable loss. If you found this story important, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. You can find even more interesting crime stories on my channel.